Okay, hi booktube, Aaron here, thanks for dropping by. Today I'm going to be talking about what I read in May and what I hope to read in the month of June. And yeah, May was a really fun reading month and I'm really excited about what I'm going to be reading or what I hope to read in June. So yeah, let's get into May. So I read 7 books, which is just above average for me, and I also enjoyed the lion's share of them as well. So yeah, let's get right into it. So the first book I finished was Mikhail Bulgakov's The Master Margarita. This was one of the books I really wanted to get to this year, and it was there's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed Bulgakov's writing style and his sense of humour, so it was quite easy to read and hard to put down as well. I think I preferred the first half of the book, which is more so essentially it's the devil coming to Moscow and just kind of running riot in the literary and sort of theatre world of Soviet Moscow. And even though I don't know much about those that world, I think I kind of got what Bulgakov was doing. I found it quite funny and satisfying. So yeah, it was good. I think I gave it about 4 stars, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then next up was Judith Herring's Byzantium, The Surprising Life of a Medieval Empire. I've been reading this for quite a while, sort of dipping in and out. I think around from the end of February to the beginning of April, I hadn't really touched it. But I was glad I sort of pushed on with it, because there's lots of really interesting stuff towards the end. Really quite unexpected stuff going on towards the end of this culture's life, I suppose. It was really great to see how, in one sense, how different Byzantium was to other societies around the same time, but also how integral and influential they were in other aspects, and also how influential they are to us and everyone who's come after them. So it was really quite eye-opening, and there's like a chapter in there about how after Byzantium's been invaded by Crusaders, then the sort of the seat of power is kind of split up across these 3 or 4 other cities. And that's just a chapter about that, and I could read a whole book about that because it sounded so fascinating. So yeah, that was really good. I think I gave this about 4 stars, maybe 4.5 stars, something like that, if I was to be picky. And then next up, Silvina Ocampo's The Imposter and Other Stories. This is translated by, it doesn't say on the front. It's translated by Daniel Balderston. And yeah, a lot of fun. So I know Ocampo mainly through her connection to Casares, who wrote The Invention of Morel. She was married to him, and also knew Borges. And now, she is really a writer I enjoy and admire. I quite like her style, her quite dark sense of humour. There's a cruelty to her stories, which I think if you sort of keep in the back of your head that maybe this is her sense of humour, is actually quite enjoyable. And yeah, on the whole I enjoyed it. Maybe towards the end there are a few stories that were weren't quite as interesting for me, but I particularly recommend that the titular story, The Imposter, and a story called Autobiography of Irene. They're just really, really good. So yeah, lots of fun. I think as well, I think most of the books I read in May I gave 4 stars. I think I gave this something like 4.25 maybe. Again, being a bit picky. Then next up is Jared Manley Hopkins as Kingfishers Catch Fire. So a selection of his poetry, but also some of his diary entries as well. And I was reading this for Maybe Midrash, mainly because I'd given myself quite a few other things to read. So I didn't really want to be reading a novel and a non-fiction work dealing with religion, but I still wanted to engage with that a little bit. And so I picked up Jeremiah the Hopkins because he is one of those poets who isn't afraid to talk about religion in the poetry. And on the whole, I actually found that the more, the poems that were more almost sort of praise poems, I didn't actually enjoy quite as much. The ones that I actually really liked were the ones that are a bit more interior and soul searching, maybe in periods when he was a bit depressed, and he's just trying to work things out. So maybe I'll share a bit of Hopkins for a Poetry Thursday to give you a taste of that. But it was enjoyable, and again I think it was somewhere around 4 stars. I can't remember exactly. Then next up is Nervous System by Lena Merouane, and this is translated by Megan McDowell. This is a book I've been wanting to get to for a while. It's on my Mooks and Gripes bucket list tag, and it was pretty good. I did enjoy the writing style of the novel and the sort of general conceit of the novel. I think it was just I'd really hyped it up in my head, so it wasn't delivering exactly what I expected it to deliver. Went to some places I wasn't quite expecting, but essentially it's about a character who is I think like a PhD student or the equivalent of that, and she's working on her thesis, and this research is being funded by her father, and it's essentially that's the central tension of the novel, that she's not really getting anywhere with her thesis and she's using up all of her father's money, but then a lot of the book is really about illness and about the human body, and how it can break down so easily, and that's really sparked by this strange condition that our main character sort of ends up with, and the doctors are a bit baffled about it, and this kind of sparks all these memories about her family's medical history, and about her mother who passes away, and about her stepmother's trial with breast cancer, and stuff like that. And so it's quite insightful, and again it's very particular. It's one of those books where I think if I were to pick a book at random with my eyes closed, open it up to a random page, I could tell that it was this book, which is, I think, quite a good thing. So I think I'd still recommend this. Again, I gave it something around 4 stars. Again, I can't remember exactly. Either just below or just over 4 stars. Then next up, another one that I've been working on for a while. This is W.S. Graham's new collected poems, and it was just delightful to really sink in to W.S. Graham. I think I'd still say he has this kind of middle period. His long poem, The Night Fishing, is probably my favourite poem, but he's just such a peculiar and particular poet, and I found him a lot of fun. So again, this was, I don't think I gave him quite 5 stars, or maybe I did. Maybe it was just below, like 4 stars and 3/4, because towards the end there were these sort of unfinished poems and these notebook poems, which really were, you could see that they were actually earlier drafts of poems that you'd already read, just under a different title. So that'd be interesting for a scholar of Graham, I suppose. But that was the only sort of downside for me with the collection. And then finally, we have Chekhov's plays. So again, this is one I've been dipping in and out of, and I've really just been reading 1 play a month since March. But then, last month, for some reason, I just felt I wanted to keep going. So I read, the 3 remaining major plays, and then the 3 jests at the end. The jests were okay. They were quite fun and quite funny, but really it was the 3 plays that I read that stole the show. So they are Uncle Vanya, 3 Sisters, and The Cherry Orchard. And it's just really satisfying to see Chekhov really developing as a writer, and the themes of what he wants to talk about developing as well. So it was it was really delightful to read, there were themes coming up that I wasn't expecting, particularly in Uncle Vanya. Sort of themes of ecology and deforestation were coming up, which I wouldn't have expected so much for the period, but that was quite interesting to see that. It was just a great experience, a great world to fall into. So I gave this 5 stars. Okay, and then on into what I'm going to be reading in June. So the majority of it is going to be taking up with reading some Proust, and also reading some, it's going to fall over, reading some Tolkien as well. With Proust, I'm going to hopefully through June just read the first volume of Remembrance of Things Past, that's Swan's Way. I made a little bit of progress in May. I read the overture, and the plan is to take my time with Proust. I don't want to rush. I think of it being like the undercoat to the rest of my reading. So I don't mind that it's probably going to take ages and ages and ages. But if I can, I might try and get through the first volume in June. And then with Tolkien, I'd been reading Fellowship of the Ring in January, and then when I started reading for the BookTube prize, I put down the Fellowship of the Ring and was just kind of reading a lot for the BookTube prize, and then I finished off Fellowship of the Ring, I think in March, but then didn't get any further with Lord of the Rings, and I was beginning to feel quite sad for it that it was sat out on the side, and I really wanted to get back to it. So my plan for June is to finish off Lord of the Rings, which should be quite doable if I really make it my priority for my reading. So I'm going to finish off The Two Towers and Return of the King. And I only started The Two Towers yesterday, and I've probably read close to a quarter of it already, so that's pretty fun. And I think once I get into Lord of the Rings, it's hard to get out again. So maybe you won't see too much of me because I'll be stuck in Middle Earth. And then I got a few other bits and pieces that I'll be wanting to read in June. So I've just started reading Edwin Wyer's selected poems, selected by T.S. Eliot, and he's so far a very fun poet as well. I always like to have a bit of poetry going on in the side. And then I've got another chunker here, and I don't quite know why I decided to start reading it, but I picked it up on my travels. It's Don Patterson's The Poem, and it's really 3 long essays about poetry and how it works, how it's made, and he's really just written this book for himself to make sense of what it is he's doing, writing poetry. They're super long essays, but the first essay, so that's lyric, so really getting into the musicality of poetry, of language, really the phonetics of what makes a poem work, whether it's rhyming or not rhyming, and that's been really interesting. I think once I've finished that first essay, I'll probably put him down for a bit, he's been good so far. Then there's another poetry collection I'd like to get to in June, and that's Kaveh Akbar's Pilgrim Bell. So I read his first collection, Calling a Wolf a Wolf, quite a while ago now, and really enjoyed it, quite like him. I think for contemporary poets he's one of my favourites, and I've read a couple of the poems from here when they came out, in journals and magazines and stuff, and sort of found them online. So I'm excited to get into that. So once I finish Edwin Wyer, I'll be on to Kaveh Akbar. And then I've got a couple of, I suppose, subs, on the bench, just in case they catch my fancy. Now I really want to read Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, and I think maybe if I've finished that Don Patterson essay and I've finished Lord of the Rings, then I could quite easily make time for Mrs. Dalloway. And then my other sub I might read, we'll see how it goes, is A Chess Story by Stefan Zweig, and yeah, don't know too much about this. I think I might have watched a video quite a while ago over on Better Than Food book reviews about this, but I can't remember too much about it, but it just caught my eye. So that's another possibility for June. But there we go, that's all the books I read in May, all the books I hope to read in June. So yeah, again, if you don't see too much of me, it's just because I'm stuck in Middle Earth, so apologies about that. But I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I hope you have a lovely reading month. Alright, take care, bye bye.